Well, hello and welcome to my video on Chapter 1. So this is going to be an overview of each section, the different terms that you learned, and an overview of how to calculate each different kind of pay. So this whole first chapter had to do with pay, and it also really worked on the basic math skills and reminded you how to multiply, divide, add, and subtract in a real world setting. So this review that I am using to go over is in Moodle. I found it on the web and it is great to review. So I'd love for you to do this, and this could be what you submit to me for Chapter 1 completed and show me your work on it. Or you could find, I posted some tests and some other things, so you could use something else as well. But this would be a great example showing me for the first anchor that you did all of Chapter 1. Okay, so let's look at section 1.1 first. You can see this is called calculating straight time pay. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard the word straight time pay. And that is just referring to pay where you're just giving an hourly rate and you work so many hours and for that hourly rate. So that's that type of pay for straight time. And the definition that they give is it's the total amount of money you earn in a given pay period. It is calculated based upon your hourly rate of pay. To determine your straight time pay, multiply the number of hours you worked by the hourly rate. So an hourly rate, we're hoping, would be like 20 bucks an hour, right? But for our first example here, so we have hourly rate times our hours worked. Here's our first example. What if I worked for 35 hours and I worked at the rate of $7.75 per hour? So the formula told us we'd multiply those together to get our total straight time pay. So I take the $7.75 and I multiply it by the 35 and I get 271.25. So when you're doing this, I would love for you to try a couple of these problems by hand. I know multiplying 3-digit by 2-digit is kind of long, but try a couple by hand just to remember, what do I do with the decimal? What do I do with a fraction? Things like that. So just some basic skills that you'll learn when you do it by hand. So number 2, we have another one where we calculate using kind of a weird decimal of $8.75 or 77 cents and then like a half a penny per hour. I've never been given a rate like that per hour, but maybe. And then you worked 36 3/4 hours. Well, how would I convert 3/4 to a decimal in order to multiply them? You could do it with a fraction, but it's really hard to multiply a fraction by a decimal. It would be easier to convert that fraction over. So the way we convert the fraction is you divide the 3 by the 4, and that's going to give you 0.75. And that's where they came up with this 36.75 over here. And then they multiplied these two. Now multiplying these two, that would be multiplying a 4-digit by a 4-digit, would take a lot of work by hand. So yeah, you can use a calculator, no problem. I just want you to practice those skills while you're doing these as well. So you see that you can get $322.48, and I don't know, that's not very much of a penny, but I don't know how you would say that. Well, you'd say 481, or you could say 481 thousandths, but that's weird. Okay, when you term in terms of money, it would be easier just to say $322.48. So there's two examples, one with pretty numbers and one with ugly numbers. And you can see this worksheet comes with practice problems. It gives you some basic problems, just like we saw in the first one, and some problems written out as word problems for you to go through. And it only has 10 questions. Okay, so try those problems. Let's move on to 1.2, calculating overtime pay. So they talk about 1.5 times and double time. So 1.5 means you get your regular pay plus half of the regular pay. So if you get $10 an hour, for your overtime, you would take half of 10, which is 5, and you'd get additional $5 per hour. So you'd get $15 per hour of all of your overtime. I loved when I worked at a gold mine outside of, or right out of high school, and they paid me time and a half, and they let me work overtime. It was great. Okay, so what we do is we calculate our straight time pay just like we normally do, and then we have to calculate our overtime pay um, by using our overtime rate times our overtime hours worked. So we have to find the overtime pay and then add the straight time and overtime pay together. So you have two different steps that you do in these problems. All right, so let's do an example. Anita Juarez earned $9.50 for a regular 40-hour work week. Her overtime rate is 1.5 times her regular rate. Last week, she worked 8 hours of overtime in addition to her regular 40 hours. What was her total pay? And I wish I could write on here, but I couldn't figure out how to let me do that. So find her straight time pay. So let's always start with, well, what did she make for her first 40 hours of work week? So we get that by 40 times the 9.5, which they do here in step one. They called them 1, 2, 3. I don't know why, but like basically step one. So we took just the 9.5 times 40 and we got $380 that she made that week. And then to find her overtime pay, you have to find her rate. And the way that they did that was they took the 1.5 times 9.5, and that came up with the rate. Another way to think of that is I take half of 9.5, so you'll take 9.5 and divide it in half, and you get, I don't know why I couldn't think of that, $4.75. I had to think about it for a second. So you get $4.75 more per hour, and on top of that 9.50. So you can add that back to the 9.50 and get the $14.25. So that's how I think of it. Well, I'll make half extra. So I take whatever rate, this one in this case it was $9.50, and cut it in half, and then add it back to the $9.50. I can't stop yawning. Okay, so that's going to give us a rate. So now every time we work overtime, we're going to make $14.25 per hour. They let us work 8 hours of overtime, so we'll multiply those together and we get $114 of overtime pay. That's a lot of money, so you get to make extra money for that overtime pay. So then to figure out her total pay, you would add these two that you calculated together. So $380 plus the 114 would give you $494 for that week. So there you go. That's kind of how overtime works. If you have a job, most of them don't let you work overtime because you get so much more money. Unless they're desperate. So here is a little chart where they want you to kind of figure out straight time pay first, figure out the overtime pay, and then add those together to get your total pay. Then it gives a couple scenarios. So notice it's only 5 questions here. All right, because those ones are a little bit longer. So try those 5 questions. Just make sure and you know, it would be even better if I should have said this in the first section. Pause it right now, try them on your paper, and then come back. Okay, the next section, 1.3, was calculating a weekly time card. Okay, so you got your little card and you're sliding it in and you're calculating how many total hours you worked. So it gives you a day-by-day record of your work hours. It shows the exact time you reported to work and the exact time you left each day. To calculate your weekly hours, you must first compute the hours you work each day. Then add them together for the entire week. Round the hours worked each day to the nearest quarter hour. So we're going to round it to the nearest quarter hour. Okay. All right. So it says total hours equals the sum of daily hours. So this brings in a couple math terms for you. Sum means add. Okay, so in this section we're going to do a lot of adding and subtracting, whereas in the section before we did more multiplication. Okay, so let's say we walk into work. Look at this example. We walk in on Monday. We put our little slot in there and we showed up at 8:45. We left at 11:45. Then we came back after lunch at 12:45 and we left again at 4:15. Okay, how many hours did I work? Well, What we're going to do is we're going to subtract the hours to figure out how many hours we worked in the morning, and then we're going to subtract in the afternoon and then add them together. So they call this step one, um, but they say find the hours worked on Monday between 8:45 and 11:45. So you take 11:45 and you subtract the 8:45, and that's going to give you the 3 hours. So you think started at 8, I went 9, 10, 11. So that's 3 total hours there. And then later I came back after lunch and I worked um, the from 12:45 to 4:15. So they did this one a little different. They said, okay, I don't know how they thought of that. So they said, okay, 4:15, and they added 12 and then subtracted the 12:45. That's kind of strange. I like the idea of just counting up. So 12:45, 1:45 is 1, 2:45 is 2, 3:45 is 3, and 4:45 would make 4. So we know we did not quite make it to 4. So you can figure out that you have 30 minutes from in between, or just subtract them. So I'm not sure. I can't think of their logic on the adding 12. So that's a little bit different way to do it. I don't know that I would have done that. So here's the thing, when you subtract something like this, you have to be careful because you can't put it in as 0.15, and that's probably where they're coming up with this different way to calculate it, is because if you put in 4.15 and you subtract 12.45, you're actually going to get 8.3, and we know we didn't work 8.3, and so they're adding, oh, okay, so that suddenly I went, hello. They're adding the 12 hours and making it military time so that it makes more sense and you can subtract them. Anyway, any way that you can count, I just counted up. I should have looked at that one a little closer on how they did it. For my brain, I just went, okay, I count up, okay, this many hours and 30 minutes. So far I have worked 3 hours and 3 hours and 30 minutes. So on Monday, I worked 6 hours and 30 minutes. Okay, and 30 minutes is how much of an hour? There's total 60 minutes, so you do 30 over 60 and reduce, and that's where they come up with the 1/2. So again, you cannot just put in like 4.15 and think that'll work on your calculator. So be careful of that. So the second step, they said, find your hours you worked on all the other days. So go ahead and subtract each different section, come up with your total hours that you worked. So they already did it for us here basically, and they came up with the different hours, and then you have to add them all together. So this is working on subtraction with different rates. So you have minutes that you're working with where you subtract the minutes and the hours. So you have to deal with that subtraction that's a little bit different, and it's very realistic because all of us have to be able to figure out our time that we'd work at a job and then add up your total hours. So I can't remember the lady's name, but Juanita, was it, or Anita? Oh, maybe we didn't have a person's name. Worked a total of 34 hours and a half hour, okay, or 30 minutes. So you could say it a half or you could say 30 minutes. So it kind of depends. So you can do it in both ways. But to calculate anything, you have to make sure it's not in minutes, it's all hours. And I wish I had a way to write on here. I wonder if I could do this and you could see me. Oh yes. So let's show something real quick in Paint so you could see me. All right, so if I have, let's say I've worked 30 hours and let's just do hours. Okay, so this looks like a second grader writing. That's just how it works. And 20 minutes. How could I figure out, now they do quarter, but that's okay. How could I figure out for 30 hours and 20 minutes, how can I make that all in hours so that I can actually figure out straight time pay, overtime pay, and be able to multiply and calculate it outright? So what I do is I think of the minutes as well. There's 20 minutes, and if there was a whole, there would be 60 minutes in that full hour. So I'm going to take the 20 minutes and I'm going to convert it to hours by just putting it over 60. So whatever your minutes are, you put it over 60 and you just reduce that fraction. So one of the cool tricks when we reduce fractions is you can not, always say cancel the zeros, but really you're dividing both the top and the bottom by 10, and that gets rid of one of the zeros. So we're going to cancel those zeros, and we'd have a 2/6. And then I look at 2 and 6, and I say, well, what divides out of 2 and 6? Well, 2 divides out of both the top and the bottom, so I can divide the top and the bottom by 2 and reduce that fraction even more to 1/3. Okay, so we could write this 30 hours and 20 minutes as 30 and 1/3 hours. Okay, so that way I can actually use calculations with that number. And the reason why they stick with the quarter hours is actually because it's easier to calculate. Okay, so let me go back to my document. Okay, right, so that's calculating your hours. Here's your practice. You have 7 questions. All right, so then we go into 1-4. So this is called Piecework Basic, and sometimes a person his take-home pay is calculated on piecework basis, and this is how much you're being paid, or you're not. Instead of being paid like an hourly rate, you actually get paid per item of work you complete. So if you ever done a job where you get paid by completing something, so maybe you're doing crafts and you're making and knitting a hat. Well, you get paid per hat that you complete, not by the hours it takes you to actually complete each item. That's why some jobs will advertise work from home, and you could make, $2,000 a week. Well, that's only if you have like superpowers and can stuff envelopes like unbelievably fast. So it's like not very realistic. Okay, but anyway, so piecework. So let's look at the formula. The total pay is equal to the rate per item, so however much money you make per item, and the number of items that you produced. So let's look at this example that they give us. Juan Santiago works for Sports Cards Plus. For each autographed card he hand numbers, he is paid 2 cents. Wow. He is paid an additional 3 cents for each corresponding certificate of authority that he completes, or authenticity. I read that wrong. If he completes 1,200 cards and certificates of now I can't even say it. Okay, an additional 1,500 cards without the certificate. What is his total pay for the day? So notice I just skipped the. Now I'm not gonna be able to say it. Okay, you could just laugh at me. Now, you know how it is when you go to say something and it just isn't going to come out right, even though you know the word. Okay, so let's look at this. So we have Juan here. He's going to make 2 cents for each of the autograph cards, and he's going to make 3 cents for the certificate of authenticity, whatever. Okay, so we're going to look at the rate per item. Well, they added them together and the total of them produced was $12.50. So they took and said, okay, so if he has this one and this one, then he'll make 5 cents because it says this one completes this many with both. And then he finishes 1,500 with just that certificate of authenticity. Okay, so where this is a little tricky on this example that I found is because it mixed two, so it gave you 2 rates, but then in the actual example it says, all right, they completed 1,200 cards with both things. And then the other one was just with one. So you're going to make 5 cents per item of the 1,200, and you'd just times those together, so you'd only make $60 for those. And then the other ones you only make 2 cents for, so you make $30 for those. So your total pay for making what sounds like a lot, hopefully it was super fast, you only made $90. So the idea of this is you make money per item. This first example was a little more complex, but the problems that you actually worked in the book and in here are a little bit more basic. So this bottom one, number 7, is a tiny bit more challenging, but if you look, you get a rate per hour and the number produced. So you're really working on multiplication again on this section and being able to multiply the rate per item times the total amount of items. All right, so I messed up the word, but you get the idea of that section. Okay, so 1.5, calculating salary. So this one, salary is really a something you get paid a lot when you're in a higher level job. And as a teacher, I get a salary. I get paid a certain amount of money for the entire year I'm on a contract. So when you are paid, the book says, when you are paid the amount of money on a regular basis, you earn what is known as a salary. The total amount of money you earn in a year is your annual salary. Your salary can be paid in the following ways. Okay, so your salary, you have this annual salary, and you're paid out that annual salary in a lot of different ways. So I'm paid monthly, and here's the monthly example. So I'm paid once a month for my salary. Sometimes you're paid every week. So you get a weekly paycheck, and there's 52 pay periods because there's 52 weeks in a year. So semi-monthly. What does semi mean? Well, not the semi you drive, right? But semi-monthly would be twice a month. Okay, so if you're paid twice a month, and so I have another job. I teach some college courses, and I'm paid semi-monthly. So I get paid on the 10th and the 25th of every month, regardless of how many days are in that month or anything like that. So that is going to be a total of 24 pay periods a year, because there's 12 months, and you double that. Right? And then bi-weekly sounds like it's almost the same thing as semi-monthly. But semi-monthly, you're paid on specific days twice a month, right? Bi-weekly, you're just paid every other week. And so you actually get 26 pay periods per year in a bi-weekly. Ironically, I get this at a different job. So I work for 2 colleges as well as for IDEA, and so I get paid monthly, bi-weekly, and semi-monthly. Kind of confusing. Okay, so the bi-weekly is different. You have to pay attention. Oh, did I get paid last week? Oh, yes. So then I get paid again in another week. So here's the basic idea. You take your annual salary and you divide it by the number of pay periods. So what is the point of calculating your salary? For 1, you get to practice your division. For 2, this is something you have to be able to figure out. Okay, if you get paid per salary. And there are a lot of jobs that pay salary. Your parents might make salary, they might make hourly. Depends on the line of work. So teachers are always paid per salary, But let's look at our first example here. Find the weekly and monthly salary. So the county medical center advertised an RN position at a starting yearly salary of $42,000. Okay, the weekly salary is the annual salary divided by the 52 weeks. So if he made $42,000, you take the $42,000 and divide it by 52, and that's going to give you the $807.49 or 69 cents. So you just divide them, right? Your total salary divided by the amount of pay periods. The second one asks for a monthly salary. So if you're paid per month, you divide that by 12. So you either going to get $3,500 a month, or every single week you get the $807.69. Or yeah, did I say that right? Yes. So these are the same pay, even though one looks like, oh wow, I made way more. Nope, they're the same thing because you're making one's weekly salary, one's monthly. It just depends on your job. Okay, so and then you have to do some examples of this. What I'd really like you to do is long division by hand with decimals is a challenging thing for people to remember, the steps and everything. I would really like you to try 3 or 4 on your own. And I understand some people forget how to do long division by hand. There is some great videos out there. You could go on to Khan Academy and just click long division, and you could get a bunch of them. Not with polynomials, though. You don't want long division with polynomials. Long division, um, like basics or something like that, is probably what you want to Google. So here's the problems on that. So try all those. Okay, so calculating commissions. I think we have 2 sections left. Wasn't there only 2? Yeah. So calculating commission. So commission, what is commission? With a commission, you are paid according to how much you actually sell. So you might be paid a commission only, or you might be guaranteed a minimum salary, and then you get commission on top of a minimum salary. So my mom works in this kind of a job. She sells stuff for a living. So she gets like minimum wage, and then anything she sells, she gets a percent of what she sells off the top of that. That's what commission is. It's typically a salesperson's job of some sort. Also think of it as a waitress. Well, when you're waitressing, you typically get a regular salary rate, which unfortunately is like $5 an hour. Maybe it was $3.18 when I was a waitress. That's how much you got per hour. Plus you got the commission of your tips. And that's where the rate comes in. When you tip someone, typically 15 or 20% is what most people tip a waiter or waitress. So you're making a commission rate of about 20% off of what you sell them. That's why they push you buying more so that you tip more. But anyway, your gross pay is greater of, okay. Then they talked about your commission or pay period is compared to your minimum. Okay, so let's look at, it's saying whatever is greater, your gross pay or salary or commission. So some jobs, what it's referring to, it just really depends on the job, but some jobs say we'll pay you this specific amount, or we'll pay you the commission depending on whatever one's greater, we'll give it to you. But a lot of jobs give you a specific amount of money at the beginning and then a rate above that. So here's the example they give us. Sandra Powers works in a clothing boutique. She is guaranteed a minimum weekly salary of $320 or 6.5% of her sales. Notice the word or, one or the other. She doesn't get both. Darn it. Whatever is greater. If she sold $5,000 worth of clothing and accessories last week, what is her gross pay? Okay, so first of all, let's look at, so if she sold $5,000, how would I find 6.5% of her sales? Anytime you're working with a percent, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to move the decimal 2 places. So you see we have 6.5, you're going to move it 2 places to the left. That would be 1, 2, and you'd have to add a 0, and it would become the 0.065. Okay, so first thing is move your decimal on your percent. Anytime you want a percent of something, doesn't matter if I want what I'm talking about. If I want a percent of something, you multiply. So think, oh, I want a percent, I move the decimal, and then I multiply. Okay, so I'll multiply the 0.065 times the 5,000, and I'm going to get my commission of $325. Okay, so what is greater, the pay of $320 or the pay of $325? Well, the commission is a better pay, so that's what she'll make. Okay, so if she would have sold a little more, she would have made even more money, kind of thing. I would have think it would be better if she got both. Okay, so this is kind of where it's going with the commission. Move your decimal on your rates, and then think of multiply, and they even put the multiplication symbol in there. I wish they used the dots because a lot of you have done Algebra 2 before this class, and you know that X is not always meaning multiplication. Okay, so go ahead and calculate this one out, and some of them make you pick either the salary or the commission, and you have to go from there. You have to kind of look at each example. Okay, so here's our last section. It's called Calculating Graduated Commissions. So you might be offered varying rates of commission based on several different levels of sales. If you receive a different rate of commission when you reach a specific quota, you are paid what is known as a graduated commission. So basically you get paid different rates depending on where you are. So the total graduated commission is equal to the sum of the commissions for all sales levels. So they have to give you the commission basically for each of it. So let's look at this example. David Michaels is a used car salesman. As initiative to bolster sales, Michaels' manager, whatever, he offers the following graduated commission. Good thing I'm not teaching you how to read today because it is not coming out. Okay, so commission percentage. So he gets 2.5% for the first $10,000 he sells. Then look what happens to his rate. He gets 5% for the next 15,000. Okay, and then he gets 8% for anything over $25,000. So notice the more he sells, the more money he makes. So it's going to push him to make more and more money. Okay, so Michael sells for the first month of June worth 32,000. You have to figure that out. So look at 32,000. So it's above the highest mark here, but for the first 10,000 he only makes this much. So let's look at the first 10,000. Okay, so we take the 10,000 and we're going to calculate how much 2.5% is of that. So remember again, you move the decimal on the percent 2 places to the left. That's where they get the 0.025, and then multiply. So we're going to multiply by the 10,000. So we made $250 for that first 10,000. Okay, so I'm going to take 10,000 off here of the 32,000. That's going to leave me $22,000 left. So out of that 22,000, 15,000 of it, we're going to make the 5% rate. Okay, so I'll take the 15,000 times the 0.05. Again, I move the decimal 2 places on the percent, and that gave me the commission of $750. So notice this was, I mean, we did sell 15,000, so it was 5,000 more, but notice how much more money you made at the level 2. Now look, we don't have a lot of money left for the next level. So we had to take the 22,000 and take off the 15,000, or think of it as the original 32,000 and subtract 25,000 off, so that we get how much we have left to get paid for. And so we have left $7,000 to get paid for, and we get that higher rate of 8%. So I move the decimal 2 places on the 8% to get 0.08, and I multiply it by the 7,000 to get the $560 at the commission level 3. So man, that was only 7,000, but I made double what I made at the lower rate. So it definitely pays to keep selling, and that's their point. They want to push you to sell and sell and sell. Okay, so then you add up all your money and you made $1,560 for that month as your total commission. Okay, so these problems, the graduated commission, are kind of long problems, and they only give you 5 on my study guide here. Okay, so then the chapter review. So this is just a review of random problems from all above. So this is kind of my overview of the whole first chapter. Please, if you want to use this just for one section, pause it, try the problems, go back, do whatever you need to with this video.